Atrahasis, Tablet 1. When the gods instead of man did the work, bore the loads, the gods' load was too great, the work too hard, the trouble too much. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. Anu their father was king, their counselor warrior Enlil, their chamberlain was Ninurta, their canal controller Enki. They took the box of lots, cast the lots, the gods made the division. Anu went up to the sky, and Enlil took the earth for his people. The bolt which bars the sea was assigned to far-sighted Enki. When Anu had gone up to the sky, and the gods of the Apsu had gone below, the Anunnaki of the sky made the Igigi bear the workload. The gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The Igigi had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris river bed, and then dug out the Euphrates. Lacuna, in the deep, lacuna, they set up. Lacuna, the Apsu, lacuna, of the land. Lacuna, inside it, lacuna, raised its top, lacuna, of all the mountains. They were counting the years of loads. Lacuna, the great marsh. They were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years they bore the excess, hard work night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront our Lacuna the chamberlain, and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the Lord, the counselor of gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Enlil, the counselor of the gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Then Allah made his voice heard, and spoke to the gods his brothers, gap of about 8 lines. Come, let us carry the counselor of gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Enlil, the counselor of gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Now cry battle, let us mix fight with battle. The gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads up for the fire god. They flared up. When they reached the gate of warrior Enlil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. The house was surrounded. The god had not realized. It was night, the middle watch. Ekur was surrounded. Enlil had not realized. Yet Kalkal was attentive, and had it closed. He held the lock and watched the gate. Kalkal roused Nusku. They listened to the noise of the Igigi. Then Nusku roused his master, made him get out of bed. My lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around your door. Enlil had weapons brought to his dwelling. Enlil made his voice heard and spoke to the vizier Nusku. Nusku, bar your door. Take up your weapons and stand in front of me. Nusku barred his door, took up his weapons and stood in front of Enlil. Nusku made his voice heard, and spoke to the warrior Enlil. O my lord, your face is sallow as a tamarisk. Why do you fear your own sons? O Enlil, your face is sallow as a tamarisk. Why do you fear your own sons? Send for Anu to be brought down to you. Have Enki fetched into your presence. He sent for Anu to be brought down to him. Enki was fetched into his presence. Anu, king of the sky, was present. Enki, king of the Apsu, attended. The great Anunnaki were present. Enlil got up, and the case was put. Enlil made his voice heard, and spoke to the great gods. Is it against me that they have risen? Shall I do battle? What did I see with my own eyes? A rabble was running round my door. Anu made his voice heard, and spoke to the warrior Enlil. Let Nusku go out, and find out a word of the Igigi, who have surrounded your door. To a command, Lacuna to Lacuna. Enlil made his voice heard, and spoke to the vizier Nusku. Nusku, open your door, take up your weapons and stand before me, in the assembly of all the gods. Bow, then stand and tell them. Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Enlil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Enki have sent me to say who is in charge of the rabble, who is in charge of the fighting, who declared war, who ran to the door of Enlil. Nusku opened the door, took up his weapons, went before Enlil in the assembly of all the gods. He bowed, then stood and told the message. Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Enlil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Enki have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble, who is in charge of the fighting, Who declared war? Who ran to the door of Elil? Lacuna. Elil Lacuna. Every single one of us gods declared war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard, the trouble too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Elil. Nusku took his weapons, went and returned to Elil. My son, you sent me to Lacuna. I went Lacuna. I explained Lacuna. Lacuna. Saying, every single one of us gods declared war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard. The trouble too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Elil. Elil listened to that speech. His tears flowed. Elil spoke guardedly, addressed the warrior Anu. Noble one, take a decree with you to the sky. Show your strength. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, call up one god and let them cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. Lacuna, do, lacuna, tasks. Gap partly filled, partly overlapped by the following two fragments. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, and while Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present, call up one and cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to Nusku. Nusku, open your door, take up your weapons, bow in the assembly of the great gods, then stand, and tell them, Lacuna, your father Anu, your counselor warrior Elil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Inugi have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who will be in charge of battle? Which guard started the war? A rabble was running around my door. When Nusku heard this, he took up his weapons, bowed in the assembly of the great gods, then stood, and told them, Lacuna, your father Anu, your counselor warrior Elil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Inugi have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Which god started the war? A rabble was running around Elil's door. Gap of uncertain length. Ea made his voice heard, and spoke to the gods his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Their work was too hard, their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There is Lacuna. Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create primeval man, so that he may bear the yoke, Lacuna, so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Gap. Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring, and let man bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked the midwife of the gods, wise Mami, you are the womb goddess, to be the creator of mankind. Create primeval man, that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It is not proper for me to make him. The work is Enki's. He makes everything pure. If he gives me clay, then I will do it. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered. And the gods can be purified by immersion. Nintu shall mix clay with his flesh and his blood. Then a god and man will be mixed together in clay. Let us hear the drumbeat forever after. Let a ghost come into existence from a god's flesh. Let her proclaim it as his living sign, and let the ghost exist so as not to forget the slain god. They answered yes in the assembly, the great Anunnaki who assigned the fates. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, he made a purification by washing. Ilawela, who had intelligence, they slaughtered in their assembly. Nintu mixed clay with his flesh and blood. They heard the drumbeat forever after. A ghost came into the existence from the god's flesh, and she, Nintu, proclaimed it as his living sign. The ghost existed so as not to forget the slain god. After she had mixed that clay, she called up the Anunnaki, the great gods. The Igigi, the great gods, spat spittle upon the clay. Mami made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. I have carried out perfectly the work that you ordered of me. You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. I have relieved you of your hard work. I have imposed your load on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. I have undone the fetter and granted freedom. They listened to this speech of hers, and were freed from anxiety, and kissed her feet. We used to call you Mami, but now your name shall be Mistress of all gods. Far-sighted Enki and wise Mami went into the room of fate. The womb goddesses were assembled. He trod the clay in her presence. She kept reciting an incantation for Enki. Staying in her presence made her recite it. When she had finished her incantation, she pinched off 14 pieces of clay and set 7 pieces on the right, 7 on the left. Between them she put down a mud brick. She made use of a reed, opened it to cut the umbilical cord, called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddesses, 7 and 7. 7 created males, 7 created females. For the womb goddess is creator of fate. He lacunaed them 2 by 2, lacunaed them 2 by 2 in her presence. Mami made these rules for people. In the house of a woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. Belet Ili, wise Mami, shall be honored. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth, and when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself. A man to a girl, lacuna her bosom. A beard can be seen on a young man's cheek. In gardens and waysides, a wife and her husband choose each other. The womb goddesses were assembled, and Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10th month as the term of fates. When the 10th month came, she slipped in a staff and opened the womb. Her face was glad and joyful. She covered her head, performed the midwifery, put on her belt, said a blessing. She made a drawing in flour and put down a mud brick. I myself created it, my hands made it. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the Kadishtu priestess, wherever a woman gives birth. And the baby's mother severs herself. The mud brick shall be put down for 9 days. Nintu, the womb goddess, shall be honored. She shall call their lacuna Mami. She shall lacuna the womb goddess. Lay down the linen cloth. When the bed is laid out in their house, a wife and her husband shall choose each other. Ishtar shall rejoice in the wife-husband relationship, in the father-in-law's house. Celebration shall last for 9 days, and they shall call Ishtar Ishara. On the 15th day, the fixed time of fate, she shall call lacuna. Gap of about 23 lines. A man, lacuna, cleaned the home, lacuna. The son to his father, lacuna. They sat and lacuna. He was carrying lacuna. He saw lacuna. Eliel lacuna. They took hold of lacuna. Made new picks and spades, made big canals to feed people and sustain the gods. Gap of about 13 lines. 600 years, less than 600 passed, and the country became too wide, the people too numerous. The country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their racket. Eliel had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I am losing sleep over their racket. Give the order that Shurupu disease shall break out. Gap of about 3 lines. Now there was one Atrahasis, whose ear was open to his god Enki. He would speak with his god, and his god would speak with him. Atrahasis made his voice heard, and spoke to his god. How long will the gods make us suffer? Will they make us suffer illness forever? Enki made his voice heard, and spoke to his servant. Call the elders, the senior men. Start an uprising in your house. Let heralds proclaim lacuna. Let them make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods, do not pray to your goddesses, but search out the door of Namtara. Bring a baked loaf into his presence. May the flour offering reach him. May he be shamed by the presence and wipe away his hand. Atrahasis took the order, gathered the elders to his door. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to the elders. I have called the elders, the senior men. Start an uprising in your own house. Let heralds proclaim lacuna. Let them make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods. Do not pray to your goddesses. Search out the door of Namtara. Bring a baked loaf into his presence. May the flour offering reach him. May he be shamed by his presence and wipe away his hand. The elders listened to his speech. They built a temple for Namtara in the city. Heralds proclaimed. They made a loud noise in the land. But they did not revere their god. They did not pray to their goddess, but searched out the door of Namtara, brought a baked loaf into his presence. The flour offering reached him, and he was shamed by the presence, and wiped away his hand. The Shurupu disease left them. The gods went back to their regular offerings. 2 lines missing to end of column. 600 years, less than 600 passed. Tablet 2. 600 years, less than 600 passed, and the country became too wide, the people too numerous. The country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their clamor. Enlil had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I am losing sleep over their racket. Cut off food supplies to the people. Let the vegetation be too scant for their hunger. Let Adad wipe away his rain. Below, let no flood water flow from the springs. Let wind go, let it strip the ground bare. Let clouds gather, but not drop rain. Let the field yield a diminished harvest. Let Nisaba stop up her bosom. No happiness shall come to them. Let their lacuna be dejected. Gap of about 34 lines to the end of the column. Gap of about 12 lines at the beginning of the next column. Call the elders, the senior men. Start an uprising in your house. Let heralds proclaim. Let them make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods. Do not pray to your goddess. Search out the door of Adad. Bring a baked loaf into his presence. May the flour offering reach him. May he be shamed by the presence and wipe away his hand. Then he will make a mist form in the morning, and in the night he will steal out and make dewdrop. Deliver the field of its produce ninefold like a thief. They built a temple for Adad in the city, ordered heralds to proclaim, and made a loud noise in the land. They did not revere their gods, did not pray to their goddess, but searched out the door of Adad, brought a baked loaf into his presence. The flour offering reached him. He was shamed by the presence, and wiped away his hand. He made mist form in the morning, and in the night he stole out and made dewdrop, delivered the field of its produce ninefold like a thief. The drought left them. The gods went back to their regular offerings. Not 3 epochs had passed. The country became too wide, the people too numerous. The country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The gods grew restless at their noise. Enlil organized his assembly again, addressed the gods his sons. The noise of mankind has become too much. Sleep cannot overtake me because of their racket. Command that Anu and Adad keep the air and earth locked. Sin and Nergal keep the middle earth locked. As for the bolt that bars the sea, Ea with his Lamu creatures shall keep it locked, he ordered, and Anu and Adad kept the air above earth locked. Sin and Nergal kept the middle earth locked. As for the bolt that bars the sea, Ea with his Lamu creatures kept it locked. Then the very wise man Atrahasis wept daily. He would carry a mashaku offering along the riverside pasture, although the irrigation water was silent. Halfway through the night he offered a sacrifice, as sleep began to overtake him. He addressed the irrigation water. May the irrigation water take it, may the river carry it, may the gift be placed in front of Ea, my lord. May Ea see it and think of me, so may I see a dream in the night. When he had sent the message by water, he sat facing the river and wept. The man wept, facing the river, as his plea went down to the Apsu. Then Ea heard his voice. He summoned his Lamu creatures and addressed them. For the neck above, rain did not fill the canals. Below, floodwater did not flow from the springs. Earth's womb did not give birth. No vegetation sprouted. People did not look lacuna. The dark pasture land was bleached. The broad countryside filled up with alkali. In the first year they ate old grain. In the second year they depleted the storehouse. When the third year came, their looks were changed by starvation, their faces covered with scabs like malt. They stayed alive by lacuna, life. Their faces looked sallow. They went out in public hunched, their well-set shoulders slouched, their upstanding bearing bowed. They took a message from Atrahasis to the gods. In front of the assembly of the great gods, they stood and lacuna. The orders of Atrahasis they repeated, in front of lacuna. Gap of about 32 lines to the end of the column. 600 years, less than 600 years passed. The country became too wide, the people too numerous. He grew restless at their noise. Sleep could not overtake him because of their racket. Enlil organized his assembly, addressed the gods his sons. The noise of mankind has become too much. I have become restless at their noise. Sleep cannot overtake me because of their racket. Give the order that Shurupu disease shall break out. Let Namtar put an end to their noise straight away. Let sickness, headache, Shurupu, Ashaku, blow into them like a storm. They gave the order, and Shurupu disease did break out. Namtar put an end to their noise straight away. Sickness, headache, Shurupu, Ashaku, blew into them like a storm. The thoughtful man, Atrahasis, kept his ear open to his master Ea. He would speak with his god, and his god Ea would speak with him. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke, said to Ea his master, O Lord, people are grumbling. Your sickness is consuming the country. O Lord Ea, people are grumbling. Sickness from the gods is consuming the country. Since you created us, you ought to cut off the sickness, headache, Shurupu, and Ashaku. Ea made his voice heard and spoke, said to Atrahasis, Order the heralds to proclaim, to make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods, do not pray to your goddesses. Lacuna, withhold his rights. Lacuna, the flower as an offering. Lacuna, to her presence. Lacuna, say a prayer. Lacuna, the presence. Lacuna, his hand. Enlil organized his assembly, addressed the gods his sons. You are not to inflict disease on them again, even though the people have not diminished. They are more than before. I have become restless at their noise. Sleep cannot overtake me because of their racket. Cut off food from the people. Let vegetation be too scant for their stomachs. Let Adad on high make his rain scarce. Let him block below and not raise floodwater from the springs. Let the field decrease its yield. Let Nisaba turn away her breast. Let the dark fields become white. Let the broad countryside breed alkali. Let earth clamp down her womb, so that no vegetation sprouts, no grain grows. Let Ashaku be inflicted on the people. Let the womb be too tight to let a baby out. They cut off food for the people. Vegetation became too scant for their stomachs. Adad on high made his rain scarce, blocked below, and did not raise floodwater from the springs. The field decreased its yield. Nisaba took away her breast. The dark fields became white. The broad countryside bred alkali. Earth clamped down her womb. No vegetation sprouted, no grain grew. Ashaku was inflicted on the people. The womb was too tight to let a baby out. Ea kept guard over the bolt that bars the sea, together with his Lamu heroes. Above, Adad made his rain scarce, blocked below, and did not raise floodwater from the springs. The field decreased its yield. Nisaba turned away her breast. The dark fields became white. The broad countryside bred alkali. Earth clamped down her womb. No vegetation sprouted, no grain grew. Ashaku was inflicted on the people. The womb was too tight to let a baby out. Gap of 2 lines. When the second year arrived, they had depleted the storehouse. When the third year arrived, the people's looks were changed by starvation. When the fourth year arrived, their upstanding bearing bowed, their well-set shoulders slouched, people went out in public hunched over. When the fifth year arrived, a daughter would eye her mother for coming in. A mother would not even open her door to her daughter. A daughter would watch the scales at the sale of her mother. A mother would watch the scales at the sale of her daughter. When the sixth year arrived, they served up a daughter for a meal, served up a son for food. Lacuna. Only 1 or 2 households were left. Their faces were covered with scabs like malt. People stayed alive by, lacuna, life. The thoughtful man Atrahasis kept his ear open to his master Ea. He would speak with his god, and his god Ea would speak with him. He left the door of his god, put his bed right beside the river, for even the canals were quite silent. Gap of about 25 lines. When the second year arrived, they had depleted the storehouse. When the third year arrived, the people's looks were changed by starvation. When the fourth year arrived, their upstanding bearing bowed, their well-set shoulders slouched. People went on in public hunched over. When the fifth year arrived, a daughter would eye her mother for coming in. A mother would not even open her door to her daughter. A daughter would watch the scales at the sale of her mother. A mother would watch the scales at the sale of her daughter. When the sixth year arrived, they served up a daughter for a meal, served up a son for food, lacuna. Only one or two households were left. Their faces were covered with scabs like malt. The people stayed alive by lacuna life. They took a message lacuna, entered in lacuna, the order of Atrahasis lacuna, saying, "How long lacuna?" Gap of about 36 lines to the end of the tablet. He, Elil, was furious with the Igigi. We, the great Anuna, all of us, agreed together on a plan. Anu and Adad were to guard above, I was to guard the earth below. Where Enki went, he was to undo the chain and set us free. He was to release produce for the people. He was to exercising control by holding the balance. Elil made his voice heard, and spoke to the vizier Nusku. Have the 50 Lamu heroes fetched for me? Have them brought into my presence. The 50 Lamu heroes were fetched for him. The warrior Elil addressed them. We, the great Anuna, all of us, agreed together on a plan. Anu and Adad were to guard above. I was to guard the earth below. Where you went. You were to undo the chain and set us free. You were to release produce for the people. You were to exercise control by holding the balance. Lacuna. The warrior Elil lacuna. Gap of about 34 lines. Adad made his rain pour down. Lacuna. Filled the pasture land, and clouds veiled lacuna. Do not feed his people, and do not give Nisaba's corn, luxury for people to eat. Then the god grew anxious as he sat. In the god's assembly, worry gnawed at him. Enki grew furious as he sat. In the god's assembly, worry gnawed at him. 3 fragmentary lines. They were furious with each other, Enki and Elil. We, the great Anuna, all of us, agreed together on a plan. Anu and Adad were to guard above, I was to guard the earth below. Where you went, you were to undo the chain and set us free. You were to release produce for the people. You were to exercise control by holding the balance. Lacuna. The warrior Elil lacuna. Gap of 30 lines. You imposed your loads on man. You bestowed noise on mankind. You slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. You must, lacuna, and create a flood. It is indeed your power that shall be used against your people. You agreed to the wrong plan. Have it reversed. Let us make far-sighted Enki swear an oath. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to his brother gods. Why should you make me swear an oath? Why should I use my power against my people? The flood that you mentioned to me, what is it? I don't even know. Could I give birth to a flood? That is Elil's kind of work. Let him choose lacuna. Let Shulat and Hanish mark ahead. Let Erakal pull out the mooring poles. Let Ninurta march. Let him make the weirs overflow. Gap of 2 or 3 lines to the end of the column. Gap of 31 lines. The assembly lacuna. Do not listen to lacuna. The gods have an explicit command. Elil performed a bad deed to the people. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his master. Tablet 3. Gap of about 10 lines. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his master. Indicate to me the meaning of the dream. Lacuna, let me find out its portent. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to his servant. You say, I should find out in bed? Make sure you attend to the message I shall tell you. Wall, listen constantly to me. Read hut, make sure you attend all my words. Dismantle the house, build a boat. Reject possessions, and save living things. The boat that you build, lacuna, lacuna. Roof it like the Apsu, so that the sun cannot see inside it. Make upper decks and lower decks. The tackles must be very strong, the bitumen strong to give strength. I shall make it rain fall on you here. A wealth of birds, a hamper of fish. He opened the sand clock and filled it. He told him the sand needed for the flood was 7 nights' worth. Atrahasis received the message. He gathered the elders at his door. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to the elders. My god is out of favor with your god. Enki and Enlil have become angry with each other. They have driven me out of my house. Since I always stand in awe of Enki, he told me of this matter. I can no longer stay in Lacuna. I cannot set my foot on Enlil's territory again. I must go down to the Apsu and stay with my god. This is what he told me. Gap of 4 or 5 lines to the end of the column. Gap of about 9 lines. The elders, Lacuna. The carpenter brought his axe. The reed worker brought his stone. A child brought bitumen. The poor fetched what was needed. 9 very damaged lines. Everything there was Lacuna. Everything there was Lacuna. Pure ones, Lacuna. Fat ones, Lacuna. He selected and put on board. The birds that fly in the sky. The cattle of Shakan. Wild animals, Lacuna of open country. Lacuna he put on board. Lacuna. He invited his people, Lacuna. Lacuna to a feast. Lacuna he put his family on board. They were eating, they were drinking. But he went in and out. He could not stay still or rest on his haunches. His heart was breaking and he was vomiting bile. The face of the weather changed. Adad bellowed from the clouds. When he, Atrahasis, heard his noise, bitumen was brought, and he sealed his door. While he was closing up his door, Adad kept bellowing from the clouds. The winds were raging even as he went up and cut through the rope. He released the boat. 6 lines missing at the beginning of the column. Anzu is tearing at the sky with his talons. Lacuna the land. He broke Lacuna. Lacuna the flood came out. The Kashushu weapon that went against the people like an army. No one could see anyone else. They could not be recognized in the catastrophe. The flood roared like a bull. Like a wild ass screaming, the winds howled. The darkness was total. There was no sun. Lacuna, like white sheep, Lacuna of the flood. Lacuna, Lacuna. Lacuna, the noise of the flood. Lacuna. Anu went berserk. The gods, Lacuna, his sons, before him. As for Nintu, the great mistress, her lips became encrusted with rime. The great gods, the Anuna, stayed parched and famished. The goddess watched and wept. Midwife of the gods, wise Mami, let daylight, let it return, and, however could I, in the assembly of the gods, have ordered such destruction with them? Enlil was strong enough to give a wicked order. Like Tiruru, he ought to have cancelled that wicked order. I heard their cry leveled against me, against myself, against my person. Beyond my control, my offspring has become like wild sheep. As for me, how am I to live in a house of bereavement? My noise has turned to silence. Could I go away, up to the sky, and live as in a cloister? What was Anu's intention as decision-maker? It was his command that the gods his sons obeyed. He who did not deliberate but sent a flood. He who gathered the people to catastrophe. Lacuna. 3 lines missing at beginning of column. Nintu was wailing, Lacuna. Would a true father have given birth to the rolling sea so that they could clog the river like dragonflies? They are washed up like a raft on a bank. They are washed up like a raft on the bank in open country. I have seen and wept over them. Shall I ever finish weeping for them? She wept. She gave vent to her feelings. Nintu wept and fueled her passions. The gods wept with her for the country. She was sated with grief. She longed for beer in vain. Where she sat weeping, there the great gods sat too, but like sheep, could only fill their windpipes with bleating. Thirsty as they were, their lips discharged only the rime of famine. For 7 days and 7 nights, the torrent, storm, and flood came on. Gap of about 58 lines. He put down Lacuna, provided food, Lacuna. The gods smelt the fragrance, gathered like flies over the offering. When they had eaten the offering, Nintu got up and blamed them all. Whatever came over Anu who makes the decisions? Did Enlil dare to come for the smoke offering? Those two who did not deliberate, but sent the flood, gathered the people to catastrophe. You agreed the destruction. Now their bright faces are dark forever. Then she went up to the big flies which Anu had made, and declared before the gods. His grief is mine, my destiny goes with his. He must deliver me from evil and appease me. Let me go out in the morning, lacuna, lacuna. Let these flies be the lapis lazuli of my necklace, by which I may remember it daily forever. The warrior Elil spotted the boat and was furious with the Igigi. We, the great Anuna, all of us, agreed together on an oath. No form of life should have escaped. How did any man survive the catastrophe? Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Who but Enki would do this? He made sure that the reed hut disclosed the order. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. I did it in defiance of you. I made sure life was preserved, lacuna, 5 lines missing. Exact your punishment from the sinner, and whoever contradicts your order, 12 lines missing. I have given vent to my feelings. Elul made his voice heard and spoke to far-sighted Enki. Come, summon Nintu, the womb goddess. Confer with each other in the assembly. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to the womb goddess Nintu. You are the womb goddess who decrees destinies, lacuna to the people. Let 1/3 of them be lacuna, lacuna. Let another third of them be lacuna. In addition, let there be 1/3 of people, among the people who the woman who gives birth yet does, not give birth successfully. Let there be the Pashitu demon among the people, to snatch the baby from its mother's lap. Establish Ugbabtu into Egishitu women. They shall be taboo, and thus control childbirth. 26 lines missing to the end of the column. 8 lines missing at the beginning of the column. How we sent the flood, but a man survived the catastrophe. You are the counselor of the gods. On your orders I created conflict. Let the Igigi listen to this song, in order to praise you, and let them record your greatness. I shall sing of flood to all the people. Listen, colophon. Hand of Epic Aya, junior scribe. Month Ayar. Year Ami Shaduka was king. A statue of himself, lacuna, lacuna.